Roman Reigns just took himself out of the draft, and there are a lot of meanings behind that. So we'll see what that's about. We'll also check out what's going on with the rest of the Bloodline and much more. Starting things off with the latest developments for Roman Reigns and the entire Bloodline universe. With just a few days before the draft, WWE released the full pools of specific superstars that were eligible for each night. Champions were all instantly locked to the brand that they're already on, while everyone else was up for grabs. Roman Reigns was noticeably eligible for night 1 of the draft, and seeing Roman Reigns up on the board was pretty strange upon first glance, because inactive talent very rarely gets included in the draft. You may have some rare exceptions such as Seth Rollins, who just got drafted during night 1, but for the most part, your part-timers, injured talent, and inactive talent aren't usually included in the draft. But looking at the night 1 pool, it was a no-brainer that Roman Reigns, despite no longer being the champion, was still the locked-in option to be taken number 1 overall off the board. But as the show opens up, Paul Heyman reveals that Roman Reigns made a last-second decision to fully withdraw himself from the entire 2024 WWE Draft. Heyman says that Roman's reasoning for the withdrawal is because Roman knows that he's not going to be around anytime soon, so he doesn't want to hog up that number 1 spot again. He wants it to go to another full-time superstar to kick off that new era with a fresh new number 1 overall pick. And that does make sense from the WWE side of things, since Roman Reigns has gone number 1 overall in the last 2 WWE drafts. WWE has been going heavy on the idea of being in a new era with new changes, so it makes sense to put an end to Roman's number 1 overall draft streak that he had going on ever since the last WWE era. And also from a character point of view, the act itself and reasoning behind Roman's self-removal is very honorable and literally comes off as a babyface act. Nothing like the man we've seen over the last few years. The Roman Reigns that we've seen over the last few years would have wanted that number 1 overall draft selection even if he was never on television. He was just so full of so much greed and wanted everything without thinking of others. But now we see the approach growth in Roman's character, that he's now taking the rest of the locker room into consideration. The Roman Reigns character could have just kept quiet and secured his number 1 draft selection just by sitting on his couch at home, but he didn't do that. He called in and took himself out of the draft, because in his heart of hearts, he knew he wasn't going to be around for a while and wanted someone else to experience that honor of being the number 1 selection, which ended up going to Bianca Belair. So again, just an act that is unheard of from the Roman we've seen from 2020 onwards. But maybe the act of taking himself out is the start of Roman's redemption arc. It's a classic storytelling arc that you see in so many television shows and movies. They take a villainous character that has done some unforgivable things, but the story puts them on a redemption arc by having them do lots of nice and redeeming gestures that start to stack up. And before you know it, that villain has either become an anti-hero or a flat-out hero through their redemption arc. So it looks like that's where things could be at with Roman Reigns. Here's a man that's done horrible things to almost everyone in the locker room over the last 4 years, manipulated his family members, and has done so many evil things. But it looks like the WrestleMania 40 loss has changed Roman for the better. It has completely humbled him in a way. It pretty much brought Roman Reigns back down to earth as a character. And Roman may not be physically around right now, but pay attention to the words Paul Heyman says, and you'll see that Roman's redemption arc has been in full effect since the Smackdown after WrestleMania. Paul Heyman said that Roman wasn't angry or out for revenge following the losses the Bloodline suffered at WrestleMania 40. His direct orders was for them to accept accountability and move forward, which again was a very honorable act since the old Roman would have been manipulating and threatening his family members and out for revenge on every single person. So the fact that he just wanted to accept the loss and have the Bloodline stand down really does show his growth. And now removing himself from the draft so that someone else can shine shows his growth again. So just a couple of nice gestures by Roman over the last few weeks that hint at his babyface transition. And now we see that Solo Sikoa has become the opposing force, the main antagonist for Roman Reigns' story. Solo is disagreeing with Roman and taking the opposite stance on both these nice gestures Roman has done over the last few weeks. Roman wanted the Bloodline to accept accountability and move forward, but instead Solo Sikoa took the route of what the old Roman Reigns would have done. He held Jimmy Uso accountable and brought in Tama Tonga to replace Jimmy. And with the WWE Draft situation, we see Solo Sikoa once again acting like the old Roman and stuck in those old ways. Solo strolls into night 1 of the WWE Draft very late and instantly questions Paul Heyman on why the Bloodline hasn't been drafted yet. And as Heyman is telling him about Roman's decision, Solo Sikoa gets Tama Tonga and appears to be threatening Paul Heyman with an attack from Tonga. But before any of that can happen, Kevin Owens gets involved to break all that up. The Bloodline, Solo Sikoa, Tama Tonga, and Paul Heyman would end up getting drafted late in the 3rd round. A big fall from grace since they used to be getting drafted in the very 1st round. Roman isn't around, but we can see how they're building up the tension between Roman and Solo's different mentalities. Solo Sikoa was there from late 2022 onwards. He was there at the peak of the Bloodline. He's seen up close and personal the success that can come from ruling with an iron fist. So he wants to now start his own tribal chief reign with that same ruling and mentality. But on the flip side, you have Roman Reigns who's coming back down to earth and realizing that the iron fist mentality was never the right way to handle things at all. So with Roman's growth and redemption arc, on top of the fact that Solo Sikoa literally went rogue and disrespected him, Roman has a lot of reasoning to come back after Solo Sikoa in this new babyface good guy role. A role that we haven't seen Roman in since very early 2020. So the way Roman and Solo just can't see eye to eye right now on any decision just intensifies their future feud with each other. But like Paul Heyman said in the comments from Roman Reigns, Roman won't be on WWE television for a very long time. So for the time being, it appears that the Bloodline has started some issues with Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. Some fans are already wondering and speculating if this could be the setup for Jacob Fatu to join into the fold and help the Bloodline against the big threats that are Randy Orton, Kevin Owens, and anybody else that wants to join them. So there's just so much different layers of storytelling happening with the Bloodline, and it'll be exciting to see where it all goes. But what are your thoughts on today's stories? Leave your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe with all notifications on, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.